Dear Venerable members of the Sangha, the friends of the Dhamma, it's always a pleasure to be in the Buddhist Maha Vihara, very comfortable place, everyone knows that. And an opportunity is very nice that we have a platform here to discuss Dhamma, and that's very valuable. Thank you very much for facilitating these valuable opportunities for us, for people to practice Buddhism. I know all of you work very hard on this, and I think you can see the blessings everywhere in the temple. Thank you. I already suggested the topic, Cakkavattisihanda Sutta, and the words that I recited now in Pali, Attadipa bhikkhave viharata atthasarana ananyasarana, Dhammadipa dhammasarana ananyasarana. And these are the words of the Buddha, and that's the admonition that Buddha gives to monks. And then in this discourse, Cakkavattisihanda Sutta, in the beginning as well as at the very end, found this statement. It looks like maybe the most important part of the discourse as a text, even though I am going to talk about political and social message, economic message, but this religious message is the center. So basically, it says that you have to rely on yourself, self-reliance. And you must not depend on another person, another refuge. And if you want to defend on something, then the Dhamma is that refuge. Live with the Dhamma, use Dhamma as your island or the lamp, and it is your refuge, and nothing else is a refuge. This is the message that runs through the scripture. On the second paragraph as well as the very last paragraph. So this is kind of the way it goes to the heart of Buddhism, self-reliance. That you have to empower yourself. Nobody can empower you, enrich you, give you power. It's only you can generate the power. That's we call very, very crucial central teaching of the Buddhism. Actually, this is maybe one of the radical things that people may struggle to achieve. So that's the main topic. So I just present it earlier. And then to our topic today. So we are talking about the Cakkavattisihanda Sutta. The topic we are going to discuss is crime, poverty, and society, but in particular, poverty. And now this one, in this series, of course, Dhammadana series occurs in this temple every week. In these 3 lectures, we strive to understand value and relevance of 3 Buddhist discourses. So that's the purpose. And last Friday, we discussed Agganya Sutta, the discourse on the Genesis. And today, we are going to talk about the Cakkavattisihanda Sutta. And here, last week as well as today, the idea is that Buddhist philosophy, philosophy here means way of life. So, way of life in politics, way of life in society. So, how valuable, how relevant is this discourse as a social and philosophical doctrine? That's what we are going to discuss. So, here it is found in a longer collection called Digha Nikaya or Dialogues of the Buddha. It's volume 3, page 59 onwards. And I'm going to talk a little bit more later on this in detail, but briefly, we are concerned about its philosophy, the insight, the rationalist way of rationalizing it, and then it's social analysis. See, Buddha was not only concerned about the mind or the salvation, but he also paid attention to other aspects. And so we are going to talk about that. And here, most fascinating thing is this causation, the theory of cause and effect. or causal analysis, dependent on a theory of Paticcasamuppada. And of course, it doesn't start with avijja, but it starts with poverty. But I think avijja is assumed, as the cause. But this causal analysis is the contribution that it makes to our understanding. And then I also, in these all three lectures, even though I'm concerned about materiality, material factors, and economic factors, but actually they are related with morals. Morals here, disciplines, individual discipline or social discipline or a discipline in the country, very important one. So here it highlights when there is a decline in human discipline, the weakness in morals, the society is bound to decline, and a social society and all the other things collapse. So that's the kind of the beginning point of social problem, what we call society become a problem, that we call it social problem. Yeah? And then, here, like the early one we talked about, Agganjutta, about Genesis, the beginning point. Now in this one we talked about specifically on poverty, poorness. Here actually poverty means, maybe it implies lack of religious understanding, but more material things like food, shelter, housing, other or jobs and things like that. That's what it means here. So Buddha has considered that as a very important one. I hope I am not too fast, but if I am too fast or if you are struggling with some words, you can raise hand and I can explain it to you, because I take it granted, because I kind of go into the usual routine of giving lectures and I forget to whom I'm talking to, and you have to forgive me for that, taking it granted, yeah? So now this is also unique because of its emphasis on poverty, and now this translation, sutta means discourse, nada means sound or roar, siha means lion, and chakka means wheel. So basically it refers to about Cakkavattikin turning the wheel for the benefit of the world, and so it's called the discourse on the lion's roar of wheel-turning monarch. So the wheel-turning monarch in Buddhism is the ideal king, the perfect king, righteous king, and all Buddhist societies want a monarch or ruler who is righteous. Yeah. So that's the focus today. What will be the political structure as Buddha saw at the time, what he expected. So I already mentioned it belongs to Digha Nikaya, and here the discourse illustrates how Buddha approached social issues, especially crime related to poverty. So the crime is seen direct outcome of poverty. So this is something we have to bear in mind. When there's stealing and so on around us, we have to ask do a causal analysis. What is the reason for it? So this is quite valuable in that respect. So here, this analysis, like poverty and so on, I call materiality. Material things like, for example, food, shelter, jobs and industries and buildings and manufacturing and all of that. Yeah. So here, significance is that it considers this materiality and people's discipline, morals, as important one for the society, and that's the important message in this sutta. Now here, I wanted to also tell that social problems are not new, even though we tend to think problems are new when new problems come, but neither social or political conflict or dispute, or even the methods of resolving them, the disputes, are not actually new. problems arise. I mean, think about the Buddha's foundational teaching, dukkha. Dukkha is basically telling about a problem as a human problem, because we have a disease. We are unhappy and not content, and we want more. Because of that, this problem is there. That's also an individual problem, and it can be a social problem, what we call like insanity in our society. So these are not new. Maybe the shape has changed, but they are definitely not new. And so pre-modern societies, as these two discourses illustrate, like Agganya Sutta and Cakkavattisihanda Sutta, we see certain problem cases, like in the Agganya Sutta's case, caste issue or class issue or racial or ethnic discrimination. Of course, as you are as a minority in this country, probably you may be able to relate to in this, and also majority countries also you can see it. And then Cakkavattisihanda Sutta, you can see the theft and murder. These are the two issues, but they are in the Buddha's time, they are still here. They haven't gone away, how much we have struggled. And so these are the kind of things that we are now here. I am going to jump to the high point in this scripture, and then later on I'm going to just go little by little to detail. But here, when I have the vicious circle of decline, I am picking up here the most important point. And this is where you want to pay attention. And this is where my argument and main points in this section. Yeah. And this is coming from the section 18, and it shows a profound link in moral decline and poverty and other issues. So the social problems are related with moral decline. That means decline in discipline. And now these are the Buddha's words. Here you may want to see the causal things also. Like it says that A leads to B, B leads to C, C leads to D. Like that, it goes like that. If you have a chart, you can probably make a circle, like chakra. So, say, in this way, monks, money not being given to the poor, poverty flourished. So, talking in terms of the past, yeah? So, it's clearly, money is an important matter even those days. And today also, like capitalism is basically based on money, who can make more money quickly, without much effort, So the money is the crucial one. So poverty is defined as not having money. And in economics, says purchasing power. The people who have the purchasing power are the rich people. People who do not have the purchasing power are the poor people. Yeah. So the money here also the same analysis. Money not being given to the poor, poverty flourishes. So here, who is giving money? Here it's seen that it's a responsibility of the state, responsibility of the administration, responsibility of the ruling system to create money. So the wealth creation is an important part of the state. So the state has a responsibility not merely donate, but creation of wealth is an important part of it. So when the state failed to do that, that's the chaos, yeah? That's what is implied there. So money not being given to the poor, poverty flourished. Because poverty flourished, so the link, causal link. Because poverty flourished, came theft, stealing. Yeah? Because theft flourished, weaponry flourished. Now here, you may wonder what is the link between the theft and weapons. And the story goes on very detailed because Mr. Leslie told me that, we don't do the Digha Nikaya because they are too long. You cannot do it in an hour. It's true. Because the story goes long, and that's why I picked it up. It's a long story. Basically, he says that the king provide money to a poor person, and then other people hear that king gives the money, they start stealing. And then when the stealing spread to king start punishing them, then the thieves start using weapons to defend themselves. Yeah? So that's what the link is, like a theft leads to weaponry. Yeah? So not necessarily war, but violent means, kind of knives and other guns and other things, kind of flourishing, because they are quite related with corruption. Yeah, because weaponry flourish, murder. So that the use of weapons means you kill. Yeah, and then because murder flourish, and then this is very interesting. The shift here, the killing is there. It's very important one, how you use your mouth. Yeah, kind of discipline your mouth. You lose your discipline in your mouth. You start telling lies. You have to false accusation. Yeah, and because telling lies flourish, malicious speech interest. So accusation, and you did that, and using vulgar language and so on. Yeah, pointed fingers and all of that. Yeah, and because malicious speech flourish, and then also it's connected with how you use your senses. Your five senses in terms of eyes, ears, nose, body, and so on, sexual relations, that's a link. And then because misconduct in sexual matters flourish, two things flourish, harsh speech and frivolous speech. Because two things flourish, and then it goes other things like covetousness and ill will, negative feelings, negative emotions. And because of covetousness and ill will flourish, and then wrong views flourish. It's kind of interesting that anger, hatred, greed, all of that is related with your own view. Wrong view flourish. And wrong view flourish, and then three things very clearly come. These are actually maybe the doctrinal element related to Buddhism: desire, iniquitous greed, and wrongfulness. These are kind of all related with your sexuality and wrong view and the greed. Yeah. So earlier also, remember when Agganya Sutta, we had this on the right hand side on the board, on the left hand side Cakkavattisihanda, on the right hand side you'll see Lola and so on, kind of the words we talked about it, like greediness. So basically both suttas identify this greed as a very important factor. Yeah, because these things flourish, and then it goes into next page. This is where another transition point. Earlier here you see, desire, hatred, and wrong view, and then it transfers into society. Especially if you are in a Confucian society like Malaysia, or India or Sri Lanka, where parents and so on respected, this is very important. So the decline in society, lack of respect for one's mother and father. These are the very important values in Asian civilizations. Your parents are, Buddha says that your parents are the Buddha at home. Your parents are the Buddha at home, so they are very valuable. So having respect to the monastics and the monks and the nuns and the mother and father, teachers, elders, these are very important ones. And you lose that discipline. And then another transition. This is very interesting. I don't know whether we can do a scientific experiment on this, but maybe in future people do. Lack of discipline and respect related to your appearance and your vitality, your lifespan and so on, kind of this is kind of linked. These beings' vitality decrease as did their beauty. So the complexion and so on decline. And here I wanted to just briefly mention there's a text called Mettanisansa, or Mittanisansa, where it says actually if you practice this, your body become radiant and healthy and so on, because there's a strong conviction in Buddhism that practicing metta enhances your personality, your appearance and so on. And it's somewhat similar. So your vitality, your beauty and decrease. And because their vitality and beauty decrease, those who lived 250 years had children who lived 100 years. So the future generation have a half of the life. So basically, parents have to bury their children. That's what it basically means. If the parents children die 100 years, parents are the ones who have to do the funerals for the children. Yeah. So now, this is the kind of it goes into further, but here we can stop. Starting from poverty onward, goes directly about how the human life gets shortened. Yeah. In a kind of causal link, kind of these more violence we have, it decreases our ability. So this is, and I pointed out below, lack of finance or purchasing power or financial resources, or in Marx term, capital. Yeah, in the Karl Marx term, capital. Lack of finance, that's related with poverty. So if you don't have the capital, you cannot start a new business, because you should be able to borrow or get money to start something. But if you don't have the finance, you cannot start it. So that means you poor remain poor forever. Poor remain forever. And and also there's a vicious circle also, because in countries like England, you can see it very clearly. The number of homeless people on the street, and people who get addicted to drugs, and kind of quite shocking. Of course, other countries also have it. But anyway, finance related to poverty. Poverty leads to theft. Theft leads to moral decline. Moral decline leads to short lifespan. So if we are interested in human well-being, enhancing our life, from the Buddha's point of view, the secret is here. Yeah. So the kind of dharmic or righteous way of life is the key for having more happiness and well-being of you and your family. Yeah. So that's the heart of our message here. This is what we get in the Cakkavattisihanda Sutta. The remaining one, I'm going to elaborate this causal link. Yeah. Okay. Anybody, any question up to this point? Yeah, it probably goes in a cycle, I think. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of perpetuated, no? Perpetuated more. And this is a kind of my, kind of make it simpler. I wrote these 2 lines, and the rest is original. So kind of to show it that link between the lack of finance and the lifespan, kind of interesting. I think somebody can draw the circle. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And now, the name of the sutta, Cakkavatti. Chakka means basically wheel. Vatti means vritti, kind of rolling it. So basically we translate wheel turner. Yeah. So this is the name for the kin. And here Cakkavatti is a Pali word, and its Sanskrit form is Chakravarti. Yeah, and we used to use Chakravarti usually, and in Sinhalese. And so, in the Buddhist text, he's an ideal ruler, and he's the best person to rule a country, and that person has unquestionable authority over governance, and that unquestionable authority comes because he adheres to righteous principles. He adopt the correct path, and from the Buddhist ways, that he runs the affairs according to Dhamma. Like the early verse that I cited. Dhamma. Live according to Dhamma, and that's what the secret lies. And now here, a little bit further, this Cakkavatti, quite an old idea. It may be even in a pre-Buddhist literature. And now I'm going to the Buddha's birth. Asita, we learn this situation. I'll put all of this here, and then you can clear. Asita was an elderly man. When Siddhartha was born, he visited the palace, and he was older man, very elderly man, and he was very sad, and his tears came. And the story says that when he came, he bowed down to the little baby, and because he was so sad that he would not live that long to have this awakening inside of the Buddha, because he knew that he's going to be the Buddha. So there, he told, as a prince, he predicted he had two options, two career paths were open for him. One, he could be a Buddha, fully awakened Buddha, but that means if he renounced the life, if he renounced his royalty. But if he stays as a king, he will be a wheel turner. That means he will be an emperor. So there we learn that this idea of Cakkavatti is pre-Buddhist. It was there as a wheel, kind of idea was there. So the birth narrative, Siddhartha's birth narrative suggests currency. That means that it existed at that time, or in circulation. Yeah, and the people were familiar with the notion of wheel turner. So the Buddha adopted probably those ideas into his teaching when he started preaching. So now here, as a discourse, as a Buddhist discourse, its preeminent significance lies its relevance to contemporary world. There are mythological aspects, narratives, but these mythological aspects we can set aside. They are not that important. And the narrative, however, presents key ideas it presents to us. A narrative presents Buddhist vision of statecraft. This means statecraft means the science of running a government, yeah? And then state centrality in resolving social problems, and also how to use just principles, fair principles for governing a country fairly, and so that everyone benefits from it. Those three ideas we can derive from this discourse. So because of that, it has a significant for us. Now, of course, Cakkavattisihanda is the ancient story and also ancient strategy adopted in the statecraft. So it may not be 100% can be implemented in the same way. It may need modification here and there because we live 2,500 years after that. And we have evolved. Of course, Buddha's time, we did not have internet, no Facebook, no Instagram, and no TikTok, and all of these, and computers and PowerPoint. We are living in a fiery world, and so it may need some adjustment. But the basic thrust is important, and so even though it comes as an ancient strategy, it can be adopted in a modern period. And important point is by the ruler, when the ruler adheres to Dhamma, it empowers the ruler. And the ruler not listening to other people, doing it what may be seen as the chaos. Now you can apply to Sri Lanka in the recent 10 years, in particular, in other countries and so on, because we have Russia, America, everywhere, because we have autocratic rulers that they rule according to their own opinion. Of course, we had a famous prime minister before, Prime Minister Sunak, and she just crashed within few days because she had to do it in her own way, for example. That's a good example, yeah? So the governance is very very important one. So adherent to laws and also building a consensus of the people is very important. So here the wheel turner is seen a weaker one when he doesn't incorporate the justice. So basically, we learn, it basically suggests us ruling has to be done justly, fairly. And then, important function of the state is managing poverty. These things go hand in hand, for healthy society. So now, let me go into the content, and this is kind of brief outline of the sutta, and we may not be able to go into all, but at least it gives you a little bit flavor how the sutta is run. And now I put everything here, so it's easier for you to look at it, and we can go one by one. Now, this preamble, the first section, is Buddha's admonition, and that's the one I kind of recited earlier. And basically it says, monks, live with yourself as an island, with yourself as a refuge, with no one else as a refuge. Live with the Dhamma as the island, with Dhamma as the refuge. And so basically Buddha says that nothing else can be solid enough as a refuge. So you have to self-rely. Self-reliance is the foundation, and that's the message. And it has a long detail about meditation, how you pay attention to feelings and so on. And because of the time limits, I am not going to do that. But if you are interested in, you may want to read that first 2 paragraphs, because that's actually clearly the Buddhist message of Nibbana and salvation, and how to elevate yourself and go beyond the materiality. And I'm not going to go into detail, but that's the admonition. And then on the right hand side, I have these square brackets. On the right hand side, 1, 2, 3, and so on. They refer to the paragraphs in the English text. So you can easily identify them, which paragraph these ideas are. But on the left hand side are my numbering, kind of for this talk, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the left is mine for organize it, But the right one is the number on the original text. So now this first number on the left is very important, and the Dalhanemi is the name of the wheel turner king, Cakkavatti king, and there it talks about 7 jewels that the king had. And I'm not going to discuss it now, what those 7 jewels are, but if you ask me in a question, I can go and show it to you. The second point is, then one of the jewels is this wheel jewel, kind of the chakra, like a cart wheel. This wheel jewel is the most important one that wheel turner has. Now, the story says that if this wheel, little bit like it's here today, but if he slip little bit like this, the wheel turner says, please tell me. If this moves, let me come and tell me. And the secret is, if it moves like that, the wheel turner cannot live long, or he cannot rule long. So that's the secret. So if there's a shift in the movement, it's like the earthquake, moving, kind of like, so kind of the wheel kind of give up early warning, do your thing before long, So kind of basically slipping the wheel results the first ruler to renounce and give it to pass to his son. And in third section, again, the wheel completely disappear. And there, the great ruler earlier, he advised, child, son, this wheel is not your heritage. It's not ancestral property. There are things that you have to do it to keep it. Kind of like that, it gives advice. This is very important one. And then the important thing is, he says that you have to govern the country fairly, righteously, justly, governed by Dhamma. And then it will come back. And then this number 5 is important if you are thinking about the Buddhism and war Buddhism and violence, and use of the imagery of various things for violence and so on, this number 5 is important. Because when this wheel turner king, the story says that his wheel, when he starts going, the wheel moves, wheels rotates, and I think I may have written it there. It's called Vattati, Parivattati or Vattati, kind of, you can talk to the wheel moves by itself. So it goes to the east, it goes to the west, it goes to the north, it goes to the south. And when it goes, the subordinates, the local rulers all welcome him. Great king, please come, we are waiting for you, please come, accept this, and so on. So everybody is subordinate to the wheel turner. So that's the secret. So this wheel has a lot of power. So it's kind of used as a controlling mechanism and subjugating the provincial king. So this is kind of quite interesting thing on the number 5. And then the 6th is kind of say conquering earth, wheel jewel conquering earth. That means that's why he become universal king. It's not a local provincial lord, because that having that wheel give you a more, like for example, my qualification, where I went, Mr. Leslie carefully read all of that. So those qualifications is what make a person, yeah. It's like that, when the wheel turner has this wheel jewel, he's recognized as the powerful person. So that's what it means, conquering earth. And then the story card, there was 1, 2, 3, 7th king come, it disappears. Now there, 8th king comes, and he comes when the wheel jewel is not there, and he become very like a teenager, kind of, he doesn't want to listen to anybody. He doesn't want to consult anyone, so he is not consulting king's ears, and he want to rule the country according to own wishes, one's opinion. And this is seen as a problem, serious problem. And this is where actually the important part come, number 8 onward, yeah. And there you see his counselors come. And counselors come and then say, listening to counselors and providing rightful shelter and not giving money to the poor and stealing. So here what it means is that it recommend that this king should listen to counselors, and his duty is giving a way of life to people, protection of people's lives, rightful shelter, that's what it means. And one important role of the ruler, he doesn't have to give his own personal money, but still he has to devise ways of generating money. That's what it means. Giving money to the poor means that enabling people to generate money. Like for example, if people have jobs, they can earn money. So creation of jobs and things like that. But he listened to the counselor, but not doing this important job of enabling the vulnerable. Yeah? And that results in stealing. Why? Say, I can't make a living. So how can I live? Only way I could do is can steal. So that's kind of very come to the details of the problem. Yeah? And interesting to look at it. And then, as a ruler, you can easily punish wrongdoers. So because the thieves intentionally stole things and got caught, they were punished. So that's how the rulers and the government works, like our courts, kind of soft lifting and so on. Actually, I have seen soft lifting. I was shocked 3 weeks ago, and kind of go through all the things. But it's quite interesting. But what can you do? And then these people who the thieves who got caught, they want to defend, and then they start sharp swords. Remember earlier I mentioned weaponry? This is the one. Sharp swords for defense. So they have knives and the guns and so on in today's time, even bombs and fire bombs and so on. Kind of the militarization or weaponization of the society occurs. And this happened in Sri Lanka after 1977. People old enough will remember in Sri Lanka. Now Sri Lanka has highly militarized, but you can see that, after this period, that Sri Lanka went into hellbound, kind of very, very serious. And so these ideas actually quite powerful if you analyze it, And then the 12th point is money not being given, poverty flourish. And we already explained it, yeah? And the link between the discipline and the vitality decrease, the age decrease, and so on. Vitality means like richness in life, in a life energy. And then come the qualities, adhamma raga, visama lobha, and miccha dhamma. We earlier had it only as desire, which is adhamma raga means desire improper manner of having greed, yeah? Visama lobha also a kind of greed, and then micchaditi, wrong view, wrongful, and also wrongful conduct, and sexuality, and so on. These three, and these are, in origin, they are mental. They lead into other things, but originally it's a mental issue, yeah. And then it has direct link with lifespan, and I think we went to in the earlier quotation up to this point, 100 years. Remember, that's where we ended, saying 200 years parents have 100 years old children. Yeah, that's where I went. So basically we are going to that story, and then this is the worst part, number 15, and not only people are not moral, but people do not have a word, what we call discipline. Even the word discipline, identification disappears. So that's the kind of seen as really the dark age of human civilization. So this is a very important statement. And then it leads to what we call promiscuous world. You people know what it means, kind of no rule. See, you can have sex even with your mother, sister, father, and so things like that, kind of no civilized codes, yeah? So that's what is kind of lead into that situation. And then this is quite interesting. Actually, we have come to this stage now, I think, in many societies, and in text called Mrugasanya, like having targeting a deer, kind of feeling that this is always an pray for me. This is something I can eat. Kind of powerful person always eat the weaker person. Kind of that kind of thing. So look at each other, look on each other as human beings, as wild beasts. Some consider, and then basically at that stage, no respect for other. And then within that society, some groups think this is not right, and they start self-disciplining. Because let us not slay just anyone. And then there it says that when people abstain from not killing, their life increases. Now you see 5 precepts. The first of the 5 precepts is this abstaining from killing. Now you can see the link here. The link here is that actually observing the first of the 5 precepts is a guarantee that you will live long. Kind of that's link is very explicitly made clear here. And then what happens is that when some people say they want to restrain and they abstain from killing, but also they abstain from taking what is not given. That means they are not stealing. and when they do not steal, their lifespan increased to 80,000 years. Yeah? So 80,000 years. And then a transition here, because when a lifespan increased to 80,000 years, this is the optimal development, the best time. And now it kind of paved the way for another episode, future Buddha. And now here, say in India, actually the word India is used in English translation, probably Jambudvipa, probably in the original, I think. And in Benares, for example, it's one city, but there were 84,000 towns. Among them, one of the best was the Ketumati, the royal city at their head. And perhaps this is Benares, I guess. Yeah? And there is the place where a wheel turner appears called Shankar. Shankar, like a conch shell in Sanskrit, but that's the name of the ruler. A wheel turner turning king appears. And then at that time, at that time, there appears the Buddha Maitreya. So kind of going to the future. Shankar and the Buddha Maitreya. Maitreya is the future Buddha. And then King Shankar becomes a monk under Maitreya. The wheel turner renounces his kingdom, become a monk. Yeah? So that's the kind of the highlight. So the story is finished there. The king become a monk under the Buddha Maitreya, and the story ends there. And then it goes back to the first part. The topic I had, Atta Deepa, Bhikkhave Viharata, Atta Sarana, Ananya Sarana, Dhamma Deepa, Dhamma Sarana, that's what it means. Live as island unto yourself, and the sermon ends there. Yeah? So this is a brief summary of what happened. There's a lot of things going on, but few important ones like 5 precepts come very clearly. So if you ask what the Dharma is, it appears to be like simple thing as 5 precepts, like Dharma. As long as this you practice this, that empower you. So that may be the reason that we take all these 5 precepts probably in our tradition, something to explore further. And then, kind of the last part say, and this is also interesting because our Buddhist monks have gone to politics and various other things in our countries, in all Buddhist countries and various vocations and so on. Basically, it advises keep up to your own pastures. That's kind of the Buddhist message. Stay where you belong, rather than treading thin. So these are the 2 messages come in the sutta: self-reliance and staying in where you belong. That means kind of path of emancipation, salvation, liberation, and renouncing and non-attached life and things like that. That's the kind of seen as the high point in the discourse. Yeah. So I gave you the causal link in the sutta, starting from materiality and how social problems started, and now I gave you the content of the sutta, identifying various phases, the birth of the universal monarch, and kind of issues of wheel jewel and these miraculous aspects of being able to rule, and how the Dhamma become the center of action, and so on. Now we already covered 1 hour. I think we can go until 11:30. We have another 30 minutes. I will give you a little bit more, and then we can have a discussion. Now the context, I'm going to go briefly what the context of this sutta. Yeah? So the discourse was given in Magadha. Magadha is the kingdom of Ajasatta. So we know that it was given in a place called Matula in Magadha. I think it's Bihar then. Yeah, present day Bihar. And we talked about this. This is the Buddha's culminating point. As this has nothing to do with materiality. Even though I emphasize poverty, crime, and so on, this has nothing to do with it. But this is very clearly Buddha's message that he has given even at as a last breath. So Attadipa bhikkhave vihara. This seems to be the quintessential message of the Buddha. You have to rely on yourself. This is the key message went to Zen Buddhism, in Japan and China and Korea, Zen Buddhism, self-reliance, yeah? That's the key message. Basically, Attadipa bhikkhave viharata, Attasarana, Ananyasarana, Dhammadipa, Dhammasarana, Ananyasarana. So Dharma is the key. So rely on the Dhamma. So that's the Buddha's message, yeah? This is the translation, I gave it to you, I read several times. So that's the beginning point. You want to take a slide, yeah? Okay, so here, basically, rely on yourself and Dhamma as the island. So very important one. And this is taken, it's a very good translation. There's a book by Stephen Collins, published by Cambridge University Press, called Buddhist Utopias. So in this one, it's a huge book. You have all this good translation, reliable translation, authentic translation, yeah? So there's a lot about the material if you want to look at it. So these pages refers to that book, yeah? Okay. And now I wanted to give you a little bit of this narrative part of, because this story comes through narration of the Cakkavattisihanda Sutta. I will tell you a little bit, because this is, we already discussed about, number 2 comes the Dalhanemi, the king, Dalhanemi nama ahosi Cakkavatti Dhammiko Raja. So Dhammika means Dharmista, righteous king, he's a wheel turner. So that's how the sutta begins. And then a wheel turner, righteous, a king of righteousness, Dhammiko Dhammaraja, a conqueror of the world, who has reached stability in his country and possessed the 7 jewels. Yeah. So one of the jewel is wheel jewel, another I did not mention it. Of course, women also consider as one of the jewels, out of the 7. We are not going. If you ask me, I will explain those things. But they are lists, catalogs, So not that important probably. And so here he conquered this earth, surrounded by the ocean, and lived from it without violence, without a sword, according to what is right. These very important, these 2 bullets. Because always a challenge for Buddhism and Buddhists is the violence, harming. Any kind of harming, whether verbal or physical or abuse or war, a problem. Now here, you see that it's characterized, he lived from it without violence, without a sword. So that means once he has this acquired, now this language is funny. Now conquering is always, you have to ask how you conquered it. But I think maybe the initial stage maybe include use of the force, maybe. But once he is established as a universal king, I think he renounced violent means. That's what it means. This is a very, very thorny section. Understanding this use of force and use of the army, because he always go with the 4-fold armies. And because his will goes there, people bow down and respect him. I wonder whether they do it because of fear, because it's a deterrent, whether it works, it is right. And so knowledge that he has these powerful weapons may have resulted other people to subjugate, even though he doesn't use the violence. Yeah? But this is a very, very problematic passage used very much today to argue that Buddhism is in favor of violence. Argued, scholars have written articles on it, but because of this language, conquering and so on like that, the kind of more militaristic tone and the imagery, you know. So even though slaying has not occurred, yeah, the rhetoric language. So this slip-in wheel, this is the occasion I mentioned, you know, he said to his ascendant, "My good man, when you see that celestial wheel jewel has slipped down from its place, then let me know." So that's the secret. So the slipping this wheel jewel has ability to predict. Then time is finished. You have to do your thing and move to the next. You know, kind of it's a warning system. It's a very, very powerful one. And then he says, you know, "I have heard that when a wheel-turning king, celestial wheel, slips down from its place, that king doesn't have long time to live." And then transition of power. It's a good warning system. Maybe we should have for all politicians today this kind of wheel, so that they know in advance to step down, you know, before kicking them out from the office, or stabbing them, or shooting them, yeah, or kicking them out on the street, you know. So maybe we should they all should have a wheel-turning jewel, so they know the time to step down, because power is amazing. When you have power, you know, you forget that you have to renounce the power. So this is the kind of that's why Buddha says that you should not get involved in power, because power corrupts you, and that's what happened to rulers, yeah? Because you have security and so on. I mean, this corrupted politician in our part of the world, you can see this disease, you know, increasing. So no, and then this part is important, noble turning of the wheel. This is very, very, very interesting, what the noble turning of the wheel means. I mean, maybe I will read this one and then stop and give you a question, because this is very important one. And what the noble turning of a wheel of a universal king means, say, depend on what is right, that is Dhamma, honor and respect it, praise it, revere and venerate it, and have Dhamma as your flag, Dhamma as your banner, governed by Dhamma, and arrange rightful shelter. Very important word. Arrange rightful shelter. Dhammika. That means that providing required things to your subjects, people. Means of living. You know, that's what it means. There's a part of the wheel turn in monarch's duty. Arrange rightful shelter, protection and defense for your family also, for the army, for your noble warrior client kings. That means like provincial rulers, you know, people, for Brahmin, householders, for town dwellers and country folk, for ascetics and Brahmins. Not only that, even for animals and birds. So it's a huge responsibility for the ruler to take all of this on board, and so you have a serious duty to enable all of the sections of the society. So once it's not done, that's where the problems comes, according to the Buddhist view or turn of the. And then number 8 goes, let no wrongdoing take place in your territory. True, isn't it? If there's a rape, bomb, stealing, gang, kidnapping, and so on, it's a trouble for the state. So say, no wrongdoing take place in your territory. If there's poor people in your territory, give them money. So here, give them, actually, it's not literally kind of donation. What it means is giving capital. You know, kind of it's a simple word, but you have to give capital and encourage them to increase that capital. Because if you just eat that, that's not enough. Yeah. So the capital should increase. So they give them money. That means they give like a bank loan, for example. In today's words, you know, credit, purchasing power. so that they can start something. Give them money. The ascetics and Brahmins in territory, my dear, who abstain from drunkenness and negligence, who practice forbearance and gentleness, each one conquering himself, calm in oneself, quenching himself, you should go to them. So basically say, they are spiritual individuals, they are doing some important work of training themselves. It's your duty to have contact with them. From time to time, visit them, consult them, get advice to improve the society. So you should go to them from time to time and ask, sir, what should be done? What is good? What is wholesome? And what is not good? What is blameworthy? What is blameless? Because these questions, they know better. You know, this, as a ruler, you may not have enough knowledge of it because they are good at ask about the right thing to do. And then it says, what is to be practiced, what is not to be practiced, doing what kind of thing would lead to suffering, and what kind of things will lead to harm, you know, in the short term or long term. Doing what kind of thing would lead to happiness, and what kind of things benefit you, me, in the long run. You should listen to them. You know, this is very important. They are kind of asking that rulers should have spiritual guidance, you know, kind of people who have discipline should guide them. You should listen to them, and then your rule, you should try to avoid any bad. You know, bad. You should listen to them and try to avoid, like a sabbapapasa akaranam. You know, the Buddhists say, sabbapapasa akaranam kusalasa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanam etam buddhana sasana. Like say, not doing all bad things, but accumulation of good. You know, kind of, that's the message here. You should listen to them and avoid what is bad, unwholesome, nakusala. You should take up what is good and do that, implement it. And use it for to reward people, benefit them. That's the noble turning of a wheel turning king. So here you see the clearly, very simple thing. Very simple thing. For ruler, you have your duty is to the people, and your duty is to empower them, enable them, and make them improve. And for that, you should work hard, but then you need advice for that. Use your counselors and go to the people and so on. So now I have a concluding part, but maybe we will have questions and then go to the concluding part. Yeah? How about that? Okay. So now the floor is open. There's a microphone. Without touching the microphone, if you can talk, it's better. Okay?
Yeah, I have a comment
in
the question.
Yeah.
Two actually very separate things. So what struck me was the kind of a paradox you pointed out in the king conquering, physically conquering, and then radiating through Dhamma.
Yeah.
And we want to look for an example of that, the best example in world history, that would be Emperor Ashoka, you know. He violently conquered, Kalinga and all of that. And then he radiated Dhamma. In fact, we are all here because of him in a sense, his legacy. So one could argue that without the first part, there would not be the second part, because his reputation was both as a great emperor and as a great supporter of Dhamma. So actually, and as you pointed out, this is a comment part, Cakkavatti comes from Chakravartin. So this is an earlier concept existing pre-Buddhist, where the king was actually expected to go and conquer the quarters, the Digvijaya. Yeah. And people welcomed him. I mean, there was force, but people welcomed him also because more than just for his power. And frequently, the kings who sort of were subdued were reinstated as vassal kings. So there's a kind of a ritual and moral dimension even behind, the violence. So I'm struck by the continuity. And the focus on poverty, here it's with the Sangha and the notion that, everybody should have be able to leave their livelihoods. So here too, in the previous pre-Buddhist context, the king had to redistribute wealth. The time of the sacrifice was the time when he would give dana, which is a very important concept as well. So this is a comment, regarding the continuity. And here, the contemporary relevance, so whether it is the previous Brahminical notion of the king or the Buddhist notion of the king, as you're putting here, the emphasis is on a certain individual who is morally, behind the king is the Sangha, or behind the king is the Brahmins. Like here, the Brahmins are very positively portrayed, unlike the Aganya Sutta. Yeah. So there's the idea that there are people who are preserving morals and they are influencing and shaping the king. But in the contemporary world, and right now I think what is so relevant is the world is being divided into democracies and autocrats. For example, China is supposed to be an autocracy, Russia is supposed to be Iran, and wars are being waged for democracy against autocracy. And this ideology, so you mentioned the term Mithya Dhamma.
Yeah.
So it's, I would say, in Sanskrit it would be Mithya Dharma. So like false ideologies. So right now the world has become a battle place because there are people who are defending freedom against these kinds of autocrats is a bad word, and this is what these suttas and previous suttas would seem to be, implying. And so I would like to have your take on what is the relevance of this sutta to this debate. Because nowadays people like the United States is making war. It's supposed to be a democracy. That at the same time there's great poverty now, homelessness, because the money is going to war to support democracy. So how does one apply this, to this situation?
Thank you. Thank you. I will answer this. Okay.
Bhante, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Follow up so they can answer together.
Yeah.
I just have two main questions, especially this final one. In the present condition, is it possible to have a wheel-turning rulers? Because humans have defilements. You got your ego, your greed, and so now, will such thing happen? Do we have such individual in the present condition? Okay. Second one related to it. The world won't be so chaotic if we have such people. So may I know what were the background that Buddha those days actually gave this sutta? Is it someone asked him, or is it the condition is so bad, or what? What was the motivation or the background when this sutta was given by Buddha? Thank you.
Thank you. See, in other, like last Friday, we talked about Aganya Sutta, and it's very clear that the issue raised by two Brahmins, there were two Brahmin disciples, and they say that, what your fellow Brahmins think about us, and they say that, oh, we are the worst now, we have become, we renounce the higher status and we become lower. Or Chandala, Sudras, we renounced to be a Brahmin. So like that they kind of bring the issue, and then Buddha respond. But here, nothing like that. There's a completely blank. Buddha directly has this admonition, like say the Attadipa Bhikkhave Viharata and so on. So we don't have the narrative, what was the cause for this. No. But it's very clear because this verse is in the beginning, at the end, and also I think even in his last 3 months when he was dying, he repeated this one, Attadipa Viharata. So this is kind of cornerstone of Buddhism. Basically say Dhamma is very central, and we must rely on the Dhamma, and that's the only one. And so I think here, illustrations say how Dhamma can be used in politics, in society, in enhancing the benefit of the wider world. So even though we don't have the story or who asked it, but it gives you some guidance. That's a valuable thing. I think that's all we can say about it. And then whether there is anybody who practice this, or anybody could say, like this gentleman, this doctor mentioned about Ashoka. Ashoka is somebody, if not Cakkavatthi, he definitely left a legacy, because before he became a king, he had a very, we call it Chanda Ashoka in our tradition, the cruel Ashoka, before his coronation. And then the transformation is that he was just Dharma Ashoka, Ashoka with Dharma. So historically it looks like Ashoka. And in Sri Lankan case, like King Sangabodhi, has come closer to that one. Yeah? Sister, you have one? Yes, it's a good point. Our sister mentioned the late king in Thailand, and he had a wider support within the country, and people consider that he is a righteous king. Yes, that could be a good example locally. But this universal, like say, if you think about continents, like Caesar or Ashoka, Ashoka definitely from Afghanistan, even having contact with Greece and so on, all the way to Sri Lanka and so on, and his inscriptions and so on, it's quite amazing. Ashoka did, kind of is so we have a legacy. Now, this word of conquering, I think because he has the powerful army, I think subordinate to him, and also kind of giving them, station them, and as a powerful person, you give instructions, have 5 precepts, keep the 5 precepts principle, and it's very powerful. So he's empowering the local king, so they become his subjects. So it's a good thing. I think I answered your question, no? Yeah. And this, but the military imagery, like military imagery here, like conquering the language, Digvijaya, and they can be problematic in coming from the Buddhist angle. But I think we have to use a little bit hermeneutics, is a kind of interpretation. We have to use interpretation to understand it. But some scholars say actually Buddhism is not non-violent because this imagery is there. But of course you have to establish, you may have to use some power, or showing that you have some means of attacking you or controlling you, probably help to subjugate. So that's the kind of the observation we can go. And I wonder if we can have one more question if anybody wants to jump in. Yeah, please go to the microphone.
Morning, Bhante. How would this philosophy actually, how can it actually coexist with other ideologies? I think that the gentleman actually mentioned. Particularly when I talk about ideologies, I'm talking about really not only religious ideologies, but mindsets like communism and that sort of thing. Yeah. And in practice, how can it be more effective? Yeah. How can we actually become more mainstream? I mean, Buddhism is really a philosophy, number one. Number two, from the gross level, what we actually see is when a religious philosophy becomes mainstream in politics, then there's again, a different, something different actually comes out of it. And how do we deal with that?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we talked about last week, Friday, about Marxism, and I think most of the things here discussed is compatible with Marxism, because actually, if Marx knew this sutta, I don't know whether he knew it, but if he knew it, he will be thrilled, because it is exactly what Marx said too. poverty, that's, kind of, there's the key issue for Marx, lack of capital, because limited group of people have the capital and the majority do not have the capital. That's the issue. And he is exactly the same thing, but they say that as a ruler you have to provide the capital, you have to empower the people. And so this is actually very much in line with communism and Marxism in theoretical level. And also some of the things like, say, the Dhamma is interpreted as 5 precepts. Very clearly there, I did not mention it, but they clearly mention. Now, 5 precepts is not Buddhist. Of course, Buddhists use it, but not exclusively Buddhist. Any religion, even a secular person can embrace it, because there's nothing related to Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha there. Or because it says abstain from killing, don't take what is not given, don't lie, don't take alcohol, and so on. These are very general principles. So here the wheel turners, Dhamma is a very general one. And he used the word Dhamma. Dhamma is a very broad sense, but here basically 5 precepts: not killing, not stealing, not bad mouth, and all sorts of things. And then the discipline. Secular government, autocratic government, whatever it is, you need discipline. So you could actually easily adopt this one very much, to any system, whether socialist or capitalist or atheistic or non-theistic, because the message doesn't have any statue or Buddha or anything as the focus. Basically says people are hungry. People are hungry, people are thirsty, people don't have places to sleep. It's an issue, address it. And so this is very down to earth. I think Marx would be a Buddhist if he came to know this. And it will have changed his course of actions too, I think. Yeah.
I'm actually following up because of what the gentleman said just now. And actually my question was, does this sutta favor a democratic form of government or an authoritarian form of government, which is a big issue? And just now the question of communism was introduced, and you spoke about Marx before too. And so I think, at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned Russia as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's very good to look at the Russian example, because Boris Yeltsin, he was considered a very democratic president. He was supported by the West, especially by the US, with lots of money. But the situation in Russia towards the end of his rule was disastrous. Talking of longevity, which is a central issue, the people's life expectancy dropped drastically. There was murder between the streets, in the streets, etc. So now, Yeltsin has, Vladimir Putin, for example, is taken as the arch autocrat and tyrant. But yet the situation in Russia has changed much better for the Russian people, precisely because of his rule. And actually there's been, and just like here, the righteous king draws inspiration from the Sangha, or earlier from the Brahmins. Similarly, the inspiration is coming from Russian orthodoxy. And yet it is not exclusive, because he favors Islam, he favors, Buddhism, because they're Buddhist regions of Russia. And talking of communism, what actually happened in the Yeltsin era was the communists who became oligarchs, right?
Yeah.
The former, the people in the upper levels of the Communist Party who became oligarchs.
We have to do it quickly because
stealing from the country.
3 minutes already gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bhante, commenting on communism, capitalism, or whatever, it is just a labor. Like Deng Xiaoping said, we don't care what is the color of the cat. As long as it catches the mice, it's okay.
Yeah.
So these are all labels and created by different. So the main thing, as Bhante says, is that you give human being enough of shelter, enough of food, enough of safety, the world will be peaceful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for both of you for input. Yes, I don't think we have to put this into communist or capitalist or autocratic or any model, but I think it can take, as you suggested, it can take it out of it and say, this issue, it needs to be addressed, and kind of in that way I think this is a value in this one. Okay, because running it out, because the monks have to go for lunch and so on, so I'm going to say, so this second talk we have examined underlying philosophical and ethical insights of the Buddha, in particular in analysis of poverty and its consequences, social consequences, as focused on Cakkavattisihanda Sutta. Our analysis has illustrated a causal link here clearly, starting from poverty and then declining and lifespan on. So here the growth of poverty and subsequent rise of lowliness in wider society is a problem and can be dangerous. And a notable doctrinal feature in the analysis, in the Buddha's analysis, is that it doesn't condone existential suffering or existential poverty, because most of the time people contribute or address this issue when you see the poverty as a karmic retribution from past negative conduct, and that's most often happen. But our discourse doesn't support this view at all. So the poverty is not seen as a previous karma, but more seen as a result of mismanagement of the economy by the rulers. So it's very powerful insight here. It's not karmic. So existential poverty is not karmic retribution for past negative conduct, but a resulting from the state's failure to provide protection to vulnerable groups. So that's the message there. So this here you see, karma is not a answer to everything. At least it's not very clear here. So lack of access to capital, like in as mentioned in Marx, even capitalism also, lack of access to capital remains a key factor in alleviating poverty. So if the only way to alleviate poverty is provide education, provide skills, provide opportunities, provide jobs and create jobs. That's the only way to, and giving loans to people to start businesses, that's the only way to eliminate poverty. Again here, the emphasis on materiality, material factors, as emphasized in Marxism, is very clearly visible in this discourse. Of course, the enlightened vision is combined with Dhamma, but the significance of material things for the improvement is highlighted. So that's all for today. And now this has been made possible by the members of the Sasana Abhivardhana Society, Mr. Lester Jayawardena and other members, Mr. Sirisena and other members, and also our Chief Priest, Venerable Datuk, Dr. Dhamma Ratana Thero, and other members of the resident monks of this society and supporters. And thank you very much for enabling this, and let's hope the good wishes, that good energy that we created, may be confirmed to our relatives and departed ones. May they accept our merit and enrich their lives and become happy. And also we wish that this merit goes to the deities, they confirm blessing on us. And also we spent over 1 hour and a half, we dedicated to the Buddha's words, and we are children of the Buddha, and may the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha empower us and achieve whatever we wish, and reach success in our this worldly life and attain enlightenment. And with that thought, we will end this one.
Thank you, Bhante Professor Mahinda, for this very explicit explanation of poverty. Actually, I just used the word poverty. I won't explain the whole title. It gives us a lot of food for thought about what the Buddha actually thought, because we are very used to the conventional way of studying the suttas. I guess this is a little off the beaten path. And Bhante will continue this series next Sunday with a subject called Economy and Empowerment, based on the Kutta Danna Sutta.
On the 9th.
on the 9th
At 10
of June, on same time, 10 o'clock, same venue at the Puja Hall, next Sunday. But as an interlude, we'll have Bhante Anomadasi, who will be here on Friday, talking about the fate of the world according to, what sutta, Bhante? Satta Sutta, yeah. Satta Surya Sutta. The fate of the world, according to the Satta Surya Sutta,
It's related
this
to Aganya.
Friday.
It's
Yeah?
related to Aganya.
Yeah, it's related to the Aganya Sutta as well, what we spoke about last Friday. So last Friday and this coming Friday is a co-relationship. Okay, so that's at 8 p.m. on Friday. Okay, so thank you very much. Hope to see you again, and there's some refreshments on your way out if you would like. Please help yourselves. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you again on Sunday.
Thank you.
Sadhu.
Thank you.